Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Tonight, I have a special guest with me. I have Steve, the drummer of the legendary Immolation. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you very much. Super stoked to be on.
So, Steve, tell us how old you were when you started getting interested in playing drums, and what was the inspiration that led to you being drawn to this instrument?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't even interested in it at the beginning. When I was in 5th grade is when the music program started at our elementary school, and I wanted to play saxophone. I had an uncle that played sax, and he used to just whip it out every now and then and wail to some songs on the stereo, jack the stereo up, and I thought that was super cool. And so I wanted to play sax, and I played for a year, and it was like really not as fun as I thought it was going to be, because you know how that first year is like Mary Had a Little Lamb and horrible shit like that. And I wanted to play stuff off the radio, so I was a little disenchanted with it. And at the same time, I was going to an orthodontist to get braces, and he told my parents that the mouthpiece on the saxophone was messing my mouth up, my overbite or whatever the case was, so I had to quit it anyway. And I just picked drums. I was like, well, that's the next coolest thing, you know what I mean? You should be able to play stuff off the radio. Everything has drums in it, And so that's what I started doing, and I fell in love with it right away and just started, just clicking away on my snare drum to stuff, like songs that I liked off the radio or bands that I liked, and it just took off from there, man. I fell in love with it, It was, like I said, just about everything has drums in it, so you can play anything and everything you want, whatever you hear. If you have a good ear and you can pick out what's going on, you can just sit down and play it, So that's where it started, 6th grade. And since then, I was in every band you could be in, like in school, out of school, everything I could get involved with. So,
and you took all kinds of lessons and all that kind of stuff too. So what was your first actual drum kit? I mean, I know when you're in school they give you a snare and that's like all you have for a while, but what was your actual first drum kit? How old were you when you got that baby?
It wasn't long after I started. I think it was probably 2 years after I started, so I would have been in like 7th or 8th grade. And my cousin had a little Dixie Sparkle drum kit. It was just a little 3-piece. Like it didn't even have like a floor tom. It just had the snare, the kick drum, and the tom tom. Mm-hmm. And that was my first kit. And I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know how to use it. I thought, just from messing around with it, I was like, this stuff sounds like crap. I couldn't figure out what was what when I was listening to songs I liked, like on the radio or whatever, and I would hear the kick drum, you know what I mean? Like, okay, that sounds like this, and I would hit my kick drum, and it was like, bow, 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 you know what I mean? It sounded like a kick drum, so I didn't understand what the hell was going on or even how to use it, but that was my first kit. And then when I started to get my act together, I started to, play actual beats on that kit, so it technically was my first kit that I used, but it didn't last long. I replaced it real quick as soon as I figured out what was going on, because I'd be trying to play like Phil Collins stuff on it and big drum fills, and all I had was a snare and a tom, pat-tat-ba-doom, pat-tat-ba-doom, back and forth, you know what I mean? So
was it really happening for you, huh?
No, I sounded horrible, but it was good to teach me how to start working your hands and feet together and all that stuff. And as soon as my parents saw me messing with that, that's when they started getting me into private lessons outside of school to teach me drum kit, because they weren't teaching you drum kit; they were just teaching you snare drum, like you said. So, and I was in a hurry; I wanted to play. So,
well, that was cool. So at least your parents were like, "Okay, now we know he's serious before we start sinking money into the kid."
Right, of course. Yeah, every parent goes through that. And, I think they were a little uneasy about the saxophone. They didn't know where that was going. But like I said, as soon as I started playing drums, that was it. It was all about that. So
when was it then that, the metal bug kind of hit you, that you started getting into all the thrash and stuff that was around at that time?
Well, I think it was, and there's a lot of factors that go into, at least I believe, what kind of music a child will get into eventually as an adult or even a teenager. And a lot of it has to do with what the parents are listening to. A lot of it has to do with what older brother or sister listen to, or, you know, there's always like a peer, someone that gets you into it or whatever. So at the same time that I was starting to study jazz with my private instructor, my cousins got me into like hard rock, heavy metal, and it was Def Leppard and Kiss, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I was like totally loving it. It was for whatever reason, it spoke to me way more than like the other like electronic music that was going on in the 80s. The pop stuff was just like, you know, especially from a drummer's point of view, you're like, man, those aren't even real drums. You know what I mean? I spent all day trying to get my snare drum to sound like this 80s electronic pad and stuff, and I was just really disenchanted with it. The metal was so much more real to me, you know, and I just kind of went that direction, and the more I listened to it, the more I was craving more of it, and I was kind of with the drums, like when you're young and you're starting with drums, you have this natural affinity to go fast, you know what I mean? Like all the kids at school wanted to play Wipeout, you know, it was like the cool thing, the test of how fast you were and stuff like that. So it was always about going fast, and I liked the faster jazz, like bebop I was starting to get into. So it just kind of sent me down that road, like, and, you know, I started getting into heavier and heavier stuff. And then we had like I don't even know where this radio station covered, but for me it was local. It was Z-Rock, it was called. And they would play whatever, just a mishmash of all kinds of metal from all over the place, you know, as from like Poison and Motley Crue all the way to like Death. I heard the band Death for the first time on Z-Rock, and I almost pissed myself. Like, my hair was standing up. I was like, oh my God, this is so evil. Like, I was raised Catholic, so I recognized when something was just totally unholy and not right. And I heard like Slayer and Death for the first time on Z-Rock and was just losing my mind. And it was scary at first, but super attractive to me. It was like totally against the grain. It was against like all the like, I was super anti-establishment right away, anti-authority and stuff, you know what I mean? I just had that kind of streak in me, so it was just like, oh, this is beautiful, this is perfect. And as soon as I would get over that initial horror and, like, that physical, like I said, that hair-raising feeling, it was just like, I was in love with it. So at that point, it was like junior high, and I started to, you know, kids start to take a little bit of a shape and they start to go in their own directions, and you start recognizing who of your friends are listening to this and that. You know what I mean? So, of course, there's a little clique at school, and then that just exacerbates things, you know, because everybody wants to find the newest, coolest thing, you know, and it kind of went like that. You know, you start putting bands together. You know, I was ambitious, wanted to play outside of band, outside of all the other crap I was doing. I wanted to do my own band, like a real, like, rock band, you know. Nothing like that going on, really. There was like one other band like a couple of years ahead of me or whatever. So I was like, screw it, you know. I went through all the kids in my school, jammed with everybody. Nobody was like quite cutting it or whatever, so I ended up like branching out and going to other schools in the area, and then getting, you know, the local, Cleveland was our closest major city, so then I would get the music magazines and the want ads from there and start just looking for people that fit the bill, you know what I mean? That's how it all got started. But Z-Rock blew it wide open for me, man. I was listening to just crap, you know, like Poison or whatever, and that just blew it wide open. I started hanging with the skaters, because at that time, like when Metallica was starting to blow up, the main avenue for that, at least where I was, because I wasn't in the city, I was in the suburbs, was like Thrasher magazine. Believe it or not, like they had like, you know, Circle Jerks and DRI and crossover stuff, and then Metallica. And so like I got a lot of music from the skate kids and from checking out their Thrasher magazines on the bus, you know what I mean, in the morning when I was a kid and stuff. So yeah, it's a similar path to everybody else's, but I think looking back, I think I was a little bit behind being from Ohio. Like when I talked to the guys in Immo, they were from New York, and they're like 15 minutes from Times Square. I mean, they're right on the pulse of everything that's going on. So that's super, like, everything beyond thrash metal hit them first. Like, they got it before I did. You know what I mean? So it's like when we sit down and talk, like, what's the best album by this band, blah, blah, blah. Their favorite albums are always an album before mine. Because they got into it earlier. So
sure.
It's just a weird thing like that. It's a weird stigma, especially with metal, but yeah, that's how it happened.
Well, I was going to say, too, with that kind of deal, too, back in the day, there was a lot of, like, in New York especially, a lot of those bands were playing around there, Agnostic Front and all that kind of stuff. You didn't really get that in Ohio anyway, so in your defense...
Shit, yeah, I know. Yeah.
And there was no social medias and all that kind of stuff, so you weren't really that far behind, Steve, so...
Yeah, no. But we were like, we got to a point there where we were just like kind of in free fall. Like we were the thrash metal, death metal astronauts of our area. You know what I'm saying? So we were the kids and the only kids that were going to the mall or going to the local, record stores or whatever, and just seeking out whatever looked like it was heavy. You know what I mean? Like we hadn't even heard of the stuff. We would just like be like, look at the album art or whatever, the name, it's a cool name. Oh, look at this guy. He looks badass, and then we just buy the tape, just, sit there for 20 minutes to an hour contemplating what we were going to spend our $7 on. And then, go out to the car and see what we found.
Now, was all this your inspiration to start Gutted?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I wanted to play and I wanted a band and I wanted to have the baddest band around, and I just did, man, like for a long time. And so like I said, I was going through local people. I went through everybody at my school, and I met a couple guys at my school that were right on the same page as me, and one guy in particular that was like ahead of the game, my best friend Scott Bryant. He had an older brother, and I think because of his older brother and his older brother's friends, he got turned on to some stuff that was a little beyond what I was listening to at the time. So when I started hanging with him and trying to put a project together with him, he was constantly showing me this heavier stuff, Deicide, Morbid Angel, Sepultura, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I was listening to thrash and he showed me Sepultura and I was like, whoa, wait, this is like a little beyond thrash. This is a little crazier, you know what I mean? Same thing with the early death metal and stuff. And he and myself and my other buddy Justin Endries, we were like the little death metal cult, man, and we were just finding stuff and exploring the stuff on our own, but it was just pushing things heavier and heavier, and they were both good players too. Scott could play anything. He played bass for us, but he played guitar. He wrote the riffs. You know what I mean? And eventually, like, I had no idea, but he could sing. Like, he started doing like Sepultura style vocals,
wow,
which wasn't what I was originally looking for. Like, we branched out. We found a couple guys from Cleveland. So it was these 3 guys from Painesville, a couple guys from Cleveland, and we had like kind of different styles, and the Cleveland guys wanted to go in more of this traditional power metal thrash route, you know what I mean? Where Scott and I were definitely into the heavier stuff. And as soon as he started singing and playing at the same time, it was just like, okay, well, this is the direction we're going in, and it kind of opened the floodgates, and we started writing heavier and heavier and more aggressive stuff, and it was great. Like, Cleveland wasn't ready for it, I don't think. Cleveland had like some semi-established bands back then, but it was totally different. Like it was almost like the New Yorkers had like the jump on us. They were listening to like an older version, like the darker stuff. Like, a matter of fact, when we first started to mingle with the Cleveland bands, the only thing that we could agree on was Immolation. That was like the common ground for us. We're like, because it was a mix between like the aggressive thrashier death metal that we were into and like the darker, more evil death metal that those guys are into and stuff. So, yeah, we had our own thing, kind of like, because we were different than them. Mm-hmm. So we were coming from, my hometown was called Painesville, and we just started going out and doing musicians nights, which were like really just kind of a trial for a band. Like, we'd stand in line after school or whatever for 4 or 5 hours just to sign up for this musicians night, and then you know, you'd never know what slot you got, and you had to play on whatever the host band's equipment was, and you could be playing at like 2:30 in the morning, like 6 bands after the main band or whatever. You never knew, but it was your only shot to get on stage and show people what you had, you know. Mm-hmm. So we started doing that all the time, man. We got like, we got it down, and we got to make friends with people at the club, and especially the general manager, owner of the club, and stuff like that, and just did well for ourselves. You know, started promoting ourselves well. We did a decent recording and stuff, and it blew up. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was just shocked, you know, and it blew up from there. Eventually, we had to change the name, and that was a little bit of a stumbling block, but the fact that we recovered so well from that, it just encouraged us more. And we were all graduating school at that time, and you know, it was like time to make a decision on what we were going to do. And you know, everything was just so encouraging for us. And we were all blown away by how popular it was and how well we were doing as a band and stuff. So we all like threw down, man. We were like, this is what we're going to do. Like, I was very, very, very close to going to college and for music. Mm-hmm. And it was a last minute thing when I decided to not. And I remember, I think it was late '93, mm-hmm. and Gorguts. I was waiting for the new Gorguts album to come out, and we had received a couple somewhat disappointing releases from major death metal bands that year. I'm not going to name any names, but I was hoping on Gorguts, because I had just recently really fallen in love with them with the Considered Dead album, and Erosion of Sanity came out, and I flipped out. Like, it was just like such a progression from the last album without sacrificing any of what was cool about the album before that. And the drums were just amazing. Mm-hmm. The drums were just so expressive and so slick and super artistic, and man, that whole album for me was just mind blowing. But the drums especially clicked something in my head and gave me, I think I was looking for some reassurance at that time that death metal drumming could be like a legitimate style of drumming. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't at that time, you know. A lot of it was super barbaric, like Napalm Death and stuff like that, and Carcass, and like, so a lot of people were not taking it seriously at all, you know what I mean? And there were a few players that showed like technique and chops and stuff like that, and so I was really clinging to them. But I don't think I was sure. Like I said, I had to make that college decision. I wasn't sure whether it could be considered a legit art form, you know? Mm-hmm. And that album, Erosion of Sanity, changed it all. I was like, oh my God, okay, this can definitely be done. This guy's doing it for sure. This is sick, slick, exactly what I want to do, this kind of thing. So that changed it for me, and I told my parents, I think the very week that I got that CD and started studying it, that this is what I want to do. This is it. You know, when I think about it, I don't want to go to college. I want to do this. This is what I want to do right now. Because the college I was looking at, I talked to them, and you wouldn't even play the drum set till you were a senior and stuff. I was like, what? That's not, you know, I'd had enough of the classical education, like timpanis and xylophone and all that. I had done that for 6 years through junior high and high school. Enough. I want to learn to play the drum set. This is where it's at. This is where I'm feeling it, you know what I mean? When I play drums, this is where I feel like I'm really expressing myself. So, yeah, it was just... everything came together that year, and I was just like, this is what I'm doing. Moved out of mom and dad's, moved to Cleveland, got an apartment out there with the guys in the band, and we just started doing it for real, you know? It was great.
And how long was Gutted around for? Or after you changed your name?
Well, Gutted had to be changed right away because there was another band, and this happened a lot back in the day, mm-hmm. and it was almost kind of a weird unspoken rule, but if you happen to find out that there was another band underground that had the same name as you, it was just kind of a race to get signed. Whoever got signed first, they got to keep the name, kind of thing. So this band from down south that was also called Gutted got signed first. So
damn it.
Yeah, name. So, and I remember there's a couple of people in Cleveland who were happy about that because they weren't real happy that we were doing well. But anyway, and that's something that pretty tough to recover from, especially when you're doing, if you think about it, we were doing a lot of promotion via flyer, via mail, and it's just your name is all you have in that demo, or if you have that demo out or whatever. So we had to come up with a new name, which we did right away, and we handled the promotion of it beautifully, I think, for that time, and did a really good job saturating the scene with the new name and the news that we had changed the name. We changed it to Odious Sanction, and Odious Sanction just, like I said, it was not even like a stutter. We just kept going, and things blew up for us, and we put out the demo under the name Odious Sanction, and started open for national acts, stuff like that. And Odious kept going all the way, I think 2005 was the official dissolving of the band. Officially, Odious Sanction was over in 2005. And that was 2 years after I started with Immolation. So, but Odious Sanction was the reason that I got into Immolation easily, because we got signed to Unique Leader. And that's how they got a hold of me, was through Eric from Unique. And I think if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been on the radar at all. So thank God for that. But I didn't get to do as much with it as I wanted. Like when Odious was at the height of popularity or whatever, when we were doing our best, I started to get offers from other death metal bands and stuff, established death metal bands that needed drummers for this or that. And I was shutting them all down just because things looked so bright with Odious, you know what I mean? So I had a lot of faith in that band, and I think it could have done a lot, but when it did finally break down, it was there was like personnel problems, and then Scott and I, my buddy Scott Bryan, I mentioned earlier, we reformed it. We were the original guys anyway, and got some new guys into play, and we made a run at it again. This is like I said, right around the time when I joined Immo. And we did the local thing, and we did another album for Unique Leader and stuff, but it didn't like blow up like it did the first time, and so it started to become more of a pain in the butt than it was fun for us, and for the other guys that we had involved in. So we were just like, screw it, The only reason we started doing this is because it was fun. So it's not fun. Let's do our own things. Let's explore our own stuff. And I was getting really busy with Immo, so, it was fine. We all had side projects at that point anyway, so.
So, so here you are with Immolation. Now, that band kind of, like you said, kind of just dissolved, but you're already with an established band that you loved in your childhood or young adulthood or whatever.
Yeah, I used to go see them.
So it must have, I was going to say, Steve, it must have not have been that huge of a blow when your other band dissolved, because by this time, Immolation is like traveling all over the world and doing all kinds of albums. You probably, I don't know how you would have had time for both.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. It's a very sentimental thing, though, because Odious was my band or whatever. I built the band. I had a lot to do with the style and the way things came out and the way the songs were written and all that. It was more of a real true expression of me from my heart, rather than you just join this band and you're just doing what these other drummers did. You know what I'm saying? Which was what it was for me for the first couple of years with Immo and stuff. So in that way, I was very, very, very sad to see it go or whatever. But yeah, it was a super exciting time, to and a lot of pressure to, joining Immo. But it was mind blowing for me. Like I said, that first tour was just crazy. Because like I said, I used to go see them. I'd go when Immolation would play in Cleveland, I'd go see them and shake their hand after the show from in the crowd. Great job, guys.
And now people are shaking your hand, Steve.
Yeah. The next thing I knew, I was meeting them at the airport in New York, getting ready to go practice in the garage. It's crazy.
So really, Steve, all this growing up and being in your band, and you're pretty much staying in the area. I can understand how you were saying you were sad because you were kind of like the only ones really at the time around there, and then you had to leave it, and it's like, oh, but that's me. We started all this. But, Immolation, you go on with them. Your life has forever changed since you joined Immolation. You boosted your frequent flyer mileage.
I've seen so much. Yeah. I've been so lucky, and I've seen so much and met so many people and experienced so many things because of it. I'm so lucky, so very lucky, man. I can't be thankful enough for that, for sure, man. It's been a completely life-changing experience to go from like a local band that barely gets out of the tri-state area to, like in the first tour I get to see, Canada, the entire United States. It was just like, wow.
So what was like your first European tour or first tour where you were off of North America? What was that like for you? You had to fly over the ocean and stuff, Steve.
Sick. Unbelievable. I'll never forget it. It was, we did, the first European tour was with Grave and Christian and a band from New Zealand that we became super fast and good friends with called Donovan Zazel. And we did it with Massive Music, so our whole crew was Polish. So you had this bus, and I'd never experienced anything like this. A bus with a bunch of Polish people, a bunch of Swedish people, a bunch of New Zealanders, a bunch of Brazilians, and then us from East Coast U.S. It was crazy, absolutely nuts. One of the best experiences of my life, and everybody on the tour was cool. Everybody in all of those bands and their crew was just, I don't know. I couldn't imagine that it could be like that. You know what I mean? Like everybody just got along so well. It was like a bunch of little kids on a vacation together. It was just nuts, man. That was great. And I became super fast friends with all those guys, and still am. That was a super bonding experience for me. It was just, it's nuts. To tour the Grave, it was just crazy.
Absolutely. I mean, I could just imagine you're like flying to like a whole nother world, doing what you love to do with people that you actually like, Yeah.
It was great. Like, I'm freaking out just thinking about it now, just like reliving it. I really, it was just incredible. I can't thank everybody involved in that enough for that. That was just a beautiful experience. And I just got to see my friends whom I haven't seen since then. This was in 2007, I think. And I haven't seen the New Zealanders since we just went down there a couple weeks ago to play, and I haven't seen them since. Man, was that a happy reunion. It's like you get off these tours with these guys, and the way it goes is most people, you see them, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter, like Marduk, they're from Sweden, but we see them all the time. It's right. Here or there at this fest, or they're over here, or we're over there. You know what I mean? You end up running into them in circles and stuff like that. So at the end of that tour, we were like, oh, yeah, I'm sure we'll see you guys soon, and blah, 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 blah. But you don't realize how isolated New Zealand is.
Right.
I never saw them again, until this last trip. So that was good to see those guys again, for sure.
That's cool. Now, Steve, you've been on every album since Harnessing Rune. How do you approach the writing process now when writing albums with Immolation?
It's really weird. It's not what I'm used to. Odious Sanction was, we would practice 5 to 6 times a week, band, very heavy on the jam, and I never play with Immolation, ever. So, like, when we write, Bob will send me his ideas. So he'll record the guitar track or whatever, and then he'll even go and he'll put, because he's a really good drummer, he'll put a drum track to it. He won't play it, he'll program, like, the idea for the groove in his head. And he'll send that over to me, and then I spend time playing with it, tweaking it, doing whatever just, jamming along with it or whatever. And when I feel ready, then I'll have him send me just a guitar and a click. Mm-hmm. And then I just start going off. I put it in GarageBand and I just play whatever the hell I feel to it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And experiment with it. And most of the time I try to keep that same groove, that original groove that he gives me or whatever, and just kind of flesh it out and make it more, just make it the best I can, And then when I'm done, I'll send that back to them, and they'll give me thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever, we tweak tempos or whatever we have to do. But that's pretty much how the writing process goes. Which was hard to get used to at first, but now it's really cool because I like to tweak things endlessly. So if I can play, to a riff or a section or whatever, 20 or 30 times or more and record them all and then go back and say, well, I like this and I didn't like that. You know what I mean? Rather than it just happening by accident and then having to remember the next time
right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It actually works out good for me. I kind of enjoy it as far as the creative process. Now, I still wish I could get together with them and jam a little bit more, but it's not as bad as it sounds and as sterile as it sounds. Like I thought at first it was going to be really stifling creatively, because I enjoy and I feed off the jam so much, like the vibe. Like the vibe of you playing with other people makes you do certain things on the drums or not do certain things on the drums. I'm used to that guiding me more or less, and now I just kind of have to rely purely on creativity and like looking ahead to to how it's going to sound as a finished product and stuff like that. But it's cool, I get to try whatever I want. I get to try 80 million different drum beats without some poor guitar player having to sit there and play it with me.
Now you guys are currently in the process of writing another album now, aren't you?
Nope, we're done. It's totally recorded.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Finished. Yeah, I don't have to listen to any more mixes. It's done. Everything. The book is closed on this one. Yeah, artwork's finished. Everything's been to the label. Yeah.
So obviously it'll be coming out next year sometime. But do you guys have like a time frame of when you would like it to come out?
It's supposed to come out late January.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's pretty soon.
Pretty soon, yeah. So it's nice. I have a little breather. I don't have any like shows or tours or anything coming up in the near future, so I can like really concentrate on my drumming and some stuff that I've been neglecting because I had a crazy summer. We were really, really busy this summer. And just last September, I broke my leg in 3 places, my right leg. So I've been like really trying to make a comeback through all this busy schedule. It's been pretty crazy. So now that I've got some time to myself, I can concentrate on rehabbing my leg a little better and doing some of the things drumming wise that I really need to be doing to get it back up to 100% that I wasn't.
So wait a minute now. You broke it a year ago?
Yeah, I had my surgery on September 11th of last year. No, I broke it on September 11th. I had my surgery on like September 14th or something last year.
Oh my God. Because you've been, like you said, touring pretty...
Yeah.
Jesus.
I know. I was in a hurry to get that cast off and get working.
Could you hurry up and make it heal? Because I got work to do. What the hell, Steve?
Yeah. Like I had 3 or 4 of the new songs for the new album, before I broke my leg. Mm-hmm. So, like, we were supposed to go in the studio originally last spring, like last April. So, I was really worried when I broke it. I was like, boy, I don't know what's going on because I was in the middle of getting songs from them. We had pushed the studio back, indefinitely at that point, but, I didn't know how soon they were going to need me. Luckily, I only missed 1 show with them, and we didn't really have to cancel anything. The timing worked out.
Jeez, you're lucky.
Yeah, super lucky. I'm glad, man. That would have killed me to have to watch them play with another drummer.
I could just imagine.
You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So what could you tell us about, if anything, about the new album?
Well, I could tell you that when he sent me those first few songs last spring or whatever, or 2 springs ago, I really didn't like it at all. And I was really upset. I was like, I sent kind of a scathing email to Bob about it and stuff, but I don't know. It's I jump to conclusions, and I need to learn. I have been learning, and I need to learn more just to trust in Bob's vision. Like when he writes this stuff, it's not like when I try to write death metal or whatever. He writes it, and he's got this very deep and layered vision of exactly what he wants, and he seems to have it like right away. You know, like he envisions the main rhythm, and then the interweaving rhythm on the other guitar, and then the leads, and any other type of overlays, and the drum beat. I mean, he gets the whole picture. And so when he sends me just a track with a drum beat, a lot of times it sounds kind of vanilla to me, or you know what I mean, like, what is this? So I think I jumped to an immediate conclusion because I'm ambitious this way, and I love this band, and I everything we do, I want it to be like better than the last thing, better than the last thing. I want every album to be people to say this is the best album they've ever done. You know what I mean? And so I'm hypercritical of everything. So when I got it, I initially didn't like it, and I was really worried, and I was kind of down about it. Like the whole time I was waiting, because he kind of hit like a writing block, and that's why we pushed the studio back and stuff like that, the studio date and stuff like that. So I had some time to really think about it or whatever, and I was kind of worried about it. But honestly, now that it's out, or now that it's not out, but now that it's finished and I see like the whole picture, I really can appreciate what he was doing, and I think he's created something very, very unique with this album. Like there's a lot of weird stuff on this album. I don't mean it in a bad way. Like I don't know. I've had a couple like private listening parties with close friends of mine, and people who are and aren't, fans of the band or whatever, and there'll be a riff that's really cool and tasty, and it's like an old school death metal riff that's easily recognizable as being of that style or whatever. And then the next thing he'll do is like weird, like off the charts, like I don't know. And I find like I'll look, and the person I'm listening to will look at me at the same time, and we're just looking at each other like what is that? Like I don't know. So I don't want to scare anybody by that. I mean, it's cool stuff, man. It's cool, but it's very strange. So like if you're into the weirdness of Immolation, this album's got plenty of that for you. But other than that, it's got the usual elements, like the normal stuff, but the blasting and all that good stuff, and the weird trance riffs are there, and the super gloomy, like the dirge riffs are there, and the militant feel is there. But there's some weirdness in here that, like, whew, I don't know, man. It threw me for a loop. I was like, wow, that's something else.
So now everybody's going to want to buy it just so they can hear what the hell you're talking about. So that's
man, it's definitely unique. It's not like I was worried that it was gonna kind of repeat of Kingdom. Like I liked Kingdom a lot. I really, really did, and I thought like of all the things I've done with them, that was like the closest thing to being like what I wanted, like on the aggression meter. You know what I mean? Like I thought that was a really good, pissed, aggressive album, but I definitely didn't want this to be a repeat of that. I didn't want it to be Chapter 2, and it totally isn't. It's way, I don't know, man. It's weird. I don't know how Vinya does it, dude. He comes up with some weird stuff.
Well, then I guess we're pretty much looking forward to listening to the new album. So, Steve, what kind of drum kit are you currently playing on?
I'm playing a Mapex Orion kit that I bought like probably 6-7 years ago, maybe. And I just love it. So perfect. Had it sounded so good in the studio this time. I was really happy with that. It's way too big and way too heavy, but it's man, it just sounds great. And I love the sizes. Like I've got the big tom sizes, because when I joined Immolation, I had a Tama kit that I was playing on a Grand Star, as a matter of fact, with the ODS situation, and it was nice. It was a fast kit, sounded good. but joining Immo, I knew like they were somewhat famous, at least in drummers' eyes, for those toms. Like even both the old drummers, they just had crazy big tom sound. You know what I mean? And it was just like when they would do a drum fill, it just sounded like the scaffolding like collapsing off the side of a building. It was huge,
right,
you know.
Right.
And I just wasn't getting that with the tom. The toms were too small, you know. So when the time came to get a kit, I made sure I got oversized toms, and I got some big ass, really good sounding toms. But man, are they heavy, and it's huge. Like one thing I didn't take into account was that when you're using bigger sized drums, the circles that your hands and the sticks travel in become larger. You know what I mean? You have to, if you're hitting the drums in the center, you have to naturally reach further and stuff. You know what I mean? And that. It's taxing. It is. It's harder to play a big drum set than it is to play a little drum set. So that was something to get used to. But I love it, man. It sounds so good.
So, Steve, with the year coming to an end really fast, do you have anything coming up for the rest of the year? I know you said you're kind of taking a little break, but is that it for this year?
I'm doing nothing.
And loving every minute of it.
I am stoked to have, like I said, to have the time to rehab my leg. I have a local little project that I play with here that I've been neglecting because I've been so busy with Immolation, and I'm super stoked to get back to that and doing that. And I have a couple offers on the table right now that I would like to entertain. And so I'm kind of working towards that as well. But like I said, all of those things really, really hinge on me getting my right leg back up to where I want it to be. So first things first, and that's what I'm doing. Every day I go to the practice spot. I'll be going after this interview and spend some hours trying to get my right leg back up to speed.
Well, there you go. So everyone can learn more about Immolation, tours, music, and all that on their Facebook page. You guys can find all kinds of links to other sites from there. And Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about your career and your work with Immolation, and all the best to you and getting that leg back up to speed.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, better every day, man. It's going to be cool. And I think, like I said, that the album will come out in late January, maybe early February, and I believe we'll be touring really soon after that. It was supposed to be a North American thing, but now they're leaning towards a European thing to start it off. I'm not sure why. It may have something to do with a band that they want to tour with or whatever that's doing something at that time, but I'm not sure yet. But yeah, early next year we will be on the road again with a new album, so I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it, man. It's fun talking drums with you.